message. Sometimes you can forward it to an email.
You all good to get started? Very good. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the City of Palm Coast City Council workshop meeting. Today is Tuesday, July the 9th, 2024. It's 9:01 a.m., and we are in the community wing of City Hall. So I would ask you all to please rise and join me in our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and a moment of silence. So please, following the pledge, you're welcome to remain standing for a moment of silence to reflect, meditate, pray, or pause for a moment. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all, and please be seated. And I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor
Present.
Alvin, Vice Mayor Danko.
Here.
Councilmember Hyder.
Present.
Councilmember Kloufis.
Present.
Councilmember Pontieri. Present. All members are present.
All right. This morning, we're going to move down the agenda directly to public participation. In order for city staff to be able to respond to your questions or concerns, please fill out a comment card with your contact information. The comment cards can be found on the table near the agendas or available from the communications and marketing director seated in the back. Anyone wishing to speak may approach the podium, provide their name, and speak for up to 3 minutes. Please direct all comments to the mayor. Be concise and to the point. Avoid delaying or interrupting the proceedings. And do not make any irrelevant, impertinent, or slanderous comments. Any person who becomes disorderly may be barred from making any additional comments and may be removed. So with that, I would invite any member of the public that would like to make public comment to come forward on any item that is not a part of the following agenda. Jeffrey, it's yours.
Good morning, Jeffrey Saib.
Good morning.
My comments today have to do with the ongoing negative situation residents are experiencing with vacation rentals in family neighborhoods. Short-term rentals, Airbnbs, mean essentially that you have a hotel next door or on your street. The occupants of the short-term rentals' reasons for renting are simply as a vacation getaway. Even with yearly rental properties, problems do occur, as with all homes. But with short-term units, it may be a weekly or even daily occurrence, as we have seen. This should be an issue between the homeowner or the rental agency and the tenants or renters. The rental agreement should state specifically the terms and conditions of the agreement, including the fact that the premises are located in a city in a residential neighborhood, and the renters must behave in accordance with the established regulations on, for example, noise, and on the entire spectrum of the community deed restrictions, not to mention within the normal bounds of human behavior in a community setting. The city might requiring an additional charge to the Airbnb for city services, invoked only when the services are required, refunded if they behave themselves. This framework still gives the renters wide latitude for enjoying themselves in their vacation getaway environment. It does not allow them to run wild, as in the many complaints raised here to the council on many occasions. Complaints by residents should be managed by the city's code enforcement department, not with dedicated personnel, but on as needed, expedited basis. But there is a catch-22 here that may put the entire process in jeopardy. In the current rendition of code enforcement regulations and reporting, the person reporting the violation can no longer make an anonymous complaint, and the suspected violator has the right to know who is making the complaint, as it is considered public record. I don't support a carve-out of public disclosure only for this situation, but something else must be done. Residents in our neighborhoods should not be deterred from reporting a code violation by the threat of being exposed to the perpetrator of the violation. Perhaps the city attorney can weigh in on options, but we must try to do better. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment at this time? Seeing no one come forward, I will close public comment. Come to the dais. Any comment?
I have none.
I just say that I'm in agreement with Mr. Saib's comments that he made this morning. I think it's very important that we protect the peace of the residents that are living in these areas where they have these Airbnbs.
I also would say it's an interesting proposition to have an additional security deposit, essentially, what it would come down to. I know later in our presentations we'll have something about code enforcement, and it seems that an additional officer fully loaded is about $105,000, so we'll have to figure out a way to be able to fund these type of things, but I concur that is an interesting possible solution.
Okay. With that, I will move to letter E on the agenda today, which is presentations. Our first presentation is the proposed fiscal year 2025 general fund, IT operations, and facilities budget and trim rate options. So, Ms. Helena, will you lead the discussion? Or, okay.
Mayor, I can introduce while Helena and Gwen are getting started. So Mayor and City Council, this is our, now we're putting numbers to some of the budget workshops that you've had about level of service. Each department has presented their level of service challenges and needs as we prepare the budget. And now there'll be a bit of a musical chairs this morning. Each director will come up and present their budget and some highlights on any new programs and what's essential services to our city. So with that, I'll let Helena go ahead and get started.
And just as a point of, I guess, of order, we'll plan to take a break, depending on the time, in advance of the comprehensive plan, so that everyone has the time they need. Okay, so that's the plan so far. Please.
Yes, good morning, Mayor, City Council. Helena Alves, Financial Services Director. I have Gwen Regsdale, our Budget and Procurement Manager, and Gwen will get us started. Thank you.
And ladies, I just ask you to pull that microphone as close as is comfortable for those folks that may be online so they can hear clearly.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Morning. So this is an outline of our agenda for this morning. We will review the trim timeline, the ad valorem history, the fiscal year 2025 maximum millage rate options, and unfunded items, as well as the revenues, expenditures, and proposed personnel requests for the general fund, facilities, and information technology operation funds. So this is a look at our trim timeline. On June 1st, the property appraiser provided a total assessed value of the non-exempt property. On July 1st, the property appraiser certified the taxable value at $9.9 billion, which represents an increase of 13.66%. Of this 13.66%, approximately 7.2%, or $631 million, is attributable to new construction. Within 35 days of the value certification, the current year's proposed maximum millage rate must be set. The assessed millage can be reduced, but cannot be increased after this point. We will come to you on July 16th to adopt the proposed maximum millage rate and to set the date and time for the first public hearing. So the first public hearing is tentatively scheduled for September 5th at 5:15 p.m. here at City Hall and will be advertised on the trim notice sent out by the property appraiser. This hearing will set the tentative budget and tentative millage rate. The final public hearing is tentatively scheduled for September 18th at 5:15 p.m., also here at City Hall, to adopt the final budget and millage rate. This chart shows the history for the last several years for the millage rate and property values, but it also incorporates receipts collected and population. So as you can see, we have been experiencing an increase in both property values as well as population growth. We will now review the general fund revenues and expenditures. So this is an overview of the general fund positions. There are no staff changes from fiscal year 2024 to fiscal year 2025. There were additional requests that will be reviewed during each department's presentations and then again during the unfunded items. This is a big picture view of the general fund revenues. Overall changes are approximately $5.6 million or 10.1%. Ad valorem is the largest revenue source for the general fund. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, the city's assessed value has increased by 13.66%, with approximately 7% attributable to new construction. Assuming the same millage rate from last year of 4.2570, we would generate $40.6 million in ad valorem revenues, of which $40.1 million would be used to support the general fund. The amount attributable to new construction is approximately $2.5 million, leaving the balance of $2.3 attributable to existing taxable properties. The next category includes the state revenues that the city receives. We are still waiting for revenue projections from the state to complete for fiscal year 2025. They are scheduled to be released in July, and as the state updates the estimates, we will revise our numbers and update council. The total projected for state revenues is $8.4 million, but we built in a moderate increase for fiscal year 2025. As I just stated, we will update once we receive the data from the state, but we typically don't experience large increases for these revenues. Next is permits and fees. This category includes planning and zoning permit fees, as well as franchise fees, both gas and solid waste. The next category involves charges for services. These comprise approximately $6.6 million. Of this, $2.4 is related to parks and recreation activities, such as program fees for golf, tennis, pool, rec general. $3.6 is related to internal service allocation for city departments. Our next category is fines and forfeitures. This category includes code enforcement fines and administrative fees, hazardous tree removals, fire mitigation, and Flagler County Sheriff's Office traffic issues. The main components of other revenues are the EV charger fees, rents, insurance settlements, and the opioid settlement. You will notice an increase in the appropriated fund balance for fiscal year 2024 from the original budget. Annually and after the audit is completed and presented to council, we analyze the prior year's available fund balance as part of the budget process and identify uses according to policy for any amounts over the required max. The details of the proposed usage will be reviewed later in the presentation as we go into details in the non-departmental budget on slide 19. For fiscal year 2025, appropriated fund balance of $999,000 is to fund the annual contingency to handle fluctuations in revenues and expenditures of $400,000. As we have in the past, the property tax value adjustment contingency of $200,000. $175,000 carryover from fiscal year 2024 for the comp plan and land development code revision, as well as $161,000 for economic development. There is also a one-time equipment for fiscal year 2025 for the fire department of $63,000. This is a big picture summary for the general fund expenditures. These will be covered in the following slides by each department director, so I will not go into detail on this slide. However, our proposed budget for the general fund is $61.5 million, an increase of $5.6 million from 2024, or 10.1%. We will now proceed to our general fund expenditures, starting with what we call our administrative service departments. Council should have received the supporting worksheets with detailed line item budget requests last week. They were also placed on our city's websites for the public under the fiscal year 2025 budget preparation tile. I will now turn the presentation over to our Financial Services Director, Helena Alves.
Thank you. So as we stated earlier, there are no new general fund positions included in the budget for fiscal year 2025, but we are proposing to bring back several positions that were left unfunded from fiscal year 2024. This is a summary of the city administrative departments. The total for fiscal year 2025 is $6.6 million. We will go over each budget on the next slides, but wanted to note that of the $741,000 increase, approximately $250,000 or 35% is related to bringing those positions back. So we'll start with the city council budget. The increase is mainly due to an increase in the travel budget for council to go to Tallahassee for legislative sessions and the executive search firm for the city manager position.
Helena, may I stop you for just a moment? Sure. So I just have a general question about the administrative services summary. The increase of $741,000, do you know how much or what percentage of that is due to the insurance increases? Or is that delineated somewhere else?
I don't have that detail right here, but I can get it before our next presentation
Okay,
on
thank you.
Tuesday, if
I
that's
appreciate
okay. The city manager and city clerk's office budgets are increasing mainly due to the frozen city administrator coordinator position from fiscal year 2024 in the amount of $100,000 that we are proposing to bring back for fiscal year 2025. We also budgeted for a new city manager's salary up to $205,000. The city attorney's budget is decreasing mainly due to the new contract approved by council in the spring.
Nice.
The communications and market increase is mainly due to the communication specialist position that was frozen from fiscal year 2024. This position will assist with current duties in the communications department, as well as the city council priority of optimizing citizen information and engagement with government. This includes social media monitoring, optimizing communications, channels and educational campaigns, correcting misinformation online, and enhancing citizen engagement efforts. As one of your strategic action plan priorities to optimize citizen information, we have included the frozen position from fiscal year 2024 for this priority. The human resources budget increase is mainly due to the city safety specialist position that was frozen in fiscal year 2024. The city has experienced an increase in workers' comp claims, which drives premiums up. This position will help mitigate future increases. This budget also includes an increase in tuition reimbursement. This adjustment reflects our ongoing commitment to support our employees' professional and personal development. The financial services budget increase is mainly due to regular salary and benefits increase. The operating expenditures includes additional funds for the external audit, as the current contract is set to expire after the completion of the fiscal year 2024 audit, and we expect an increase in fees. The RFP process will be done in the spring. We will now review the non-departmental budget. There are several components to this budget, and we will review them separately. We will start with the fiscal year 2024 estimated budget. The increase in interfund transfers from the original budget of $1.5 million is the proposed transfer of fund balance in the amount of $3.5 million to the fire impact fee fund for the fire station projects that are currently underfunded. For fiscal year 2025, we are proposing the contingency for revenue and expense fluctuations, as well as value adjustment board value changes as we've done in the past. We're still waiting for revenue estimates from the state, as well as finalizing department budgets. But as presented today, we have $650,000 available for council addition consideration, and we will discuss that later on the presentation. There are specific slides just for that. Before I move on to law enforcement, any questions on administrative and non-departmental?
Question, anyone?
I have none. I have no questions.
I do have a question, but it really relates to I think at the end of your presentation, and City Manager, maybe you can think about this while we're going through. So City Council has worked on and approved a strategic action plan or priorities. I don't think it's easy for the public to see a link between what we've done with the strategic action plan priority setting and the presentation today. So it's just something to think about going forward. They seem to be not disconnected, but I'm not seeing any linkage between the two. It would be good to bring them together to show that this is an ongoing, connected process, which the vision of City Council offers to staff, and then staff begins to calculate the dollars associated with it.
Understood, Mayor.
I do have one question, I'm sorry. On the general fund revenue projections, the charges for internal services, it looks like they went down by 311,000. What do we attribute that to?
So it is based on the fiscal year 2024 budget as approved. So it was lower due to the rollback rate. So this year's allocations are going to be lower.
I see, okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
So now we'll move on to the law enforcement budget, sorry. The sheriff presented his budget request to council at the June 18th meeting. This is the budget to support his request, add the contractual increase as well as the 9 new deputies. Overall, the law enforcement budget is increasing by 1.6 million or 22.2%. Any questions on Sheriff Contra before we move forward? Okay.
No,
So,
well, may I ask one question? What is our cost of living increase, our COLA this year?
at 3.9%.
Okay, gotcha. So it is matching okay, that's perfect. Good. That's what I wanted to hear.
I just had one comment, and I know I've expressed this before, and I think we're still waiting on the information, but just to kind of put the idea in the minds of my colleagues, I am still very interested in what the impact fees that we collect and pass through to the county, what those can cover for this increase, because I understand it can cover certain equipment and things of that nature, because I'm of the opinion that rather than funding the full 1.6 million, we should be only funding that amount minus whatever the impact fees can pay for, because those are impact fees that we collect by the city and they go straight to the county. So, I mean, even if it's only a couple $100,000, that's a few full-time employees for the city. Those are more boots on the ground, more code enforcement, more people working on our medians and working on the beautification of our city. So it does matter. So I just look forward to getting those figures from staff, and I would ask council to just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we look to fund the sheriff's increased contract.
Yep, absolutely. So now we'll move on to the department's portion of the budget presentation. And we're going to have Carl Cody, the Director of Construction Management and Engineering, join us to present his department budget.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Carl.
Director of Stormwater Engineering. So our department, or this division within Stormwater Engineering, covers the general fund staff, which is our transportation division group and our parks and facilities group, as well as some proration of, the administrative staff and myself, the director. So right now we're showing a change in 25 from 24 being a drop in the budget, and that was primarily due to the funding of the strategic action plan for the residential speed safety study that was performed this year. That was funded directly out of this budget. So there are some increases in personnel costs and, other benefits and whatnot tied to that. So overall, it's a deduct, but the big deduct is tied to not having to fund that priority item in 25. So no new positions in here. There were none frozen last year. So pretty much the same. Any questions?
There seem to be no questions at this time, but thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Jason DiLorenzo, the Chief of Staff, will now present the Economic Development and Community Development Division budgets.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council. Jason DiLorenzo, Chief of Staff. Now we're going to take a look at the general fund budgets for the Community Development Department, which covers planning, code, business tax, and economic development. Please note that the Building Division budget, which is an enterprise fund, is not included in this review, and it'll come in a future time. Next slide. The Planning Division, which includes site development, requests a 10.3% increase with no additional staff. Personal services comprise 73% of the budget. A planning manager position was requested but not funded. Development applications continue to be robust, and the planning manager will assist planners to manage projects to ensure performance metrics are being maintained while also managing the land development code update following the completion of the comprehensive plan. And at the end of this presentation, Helena and Gwen will come back to a slide that includes these unfunded positions. Next slide.
Can I stop you for just a moment?
Please.
Why an additional planning manager rather than just an additional planner?
We added a planner last year, and really what we need is a manager who can really be that central hub for planning to help better manage the planners, make sure they stay on task. It's actually, I'm going to cover it in this slide right here.
Okay.
With the land development code update coming on, there's a lot of, Ray's been really the project manager for the comprehensive plan, and it's taken away all that time that he would normally spend working with the planners and keeping projects on task and making sure that we're meeting all the requirements of the code and providing good presentations to City Council as they get moved forward. And the land development code is going to be a multi-year project, and we're not going to be able to complete that in a year. It's way too big to complete that. So planning manager help have someone that can be rooted and, do the regular work of planning while we're doing these other special projects.
So how many planners do we currently have in the city?
Currently, we have an environmental planner, 2 planners, a senior planner, and a transportation planner.
Okay.
Oh, and a landscape architect.
So what, 5 or 6?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yes.
Who do they report to now?
They report to Ray.
Okay, so Ray is taking on the role of what he does in that capacity and planning manager
Correct.
right now. And do we anticipate this position being needed even after the comp plan is completed? Because I don't obviously want to fund something that's temporary in
Yeah,
use,
of
so to
course.
speak.
Yeah, as we continue to grow, we're going to need that staff to help, work the projects through the system. We're really understaffed in the planning department in general.
Okay, thank you.
Jason, do we still, I don't want to call it outsource, but do we still use outside consultants, if you will, for some of our more cookie cutter plans that come through, or are we not utilizing outside service anymore?
In the building department, we're reducing our reliance on an outside private provider. But in planning, other than what's required by state law, which would be second-party surveying and legal review, we do not have an outside planner that does review.
Understood. Cool. Thank you.
Jason, with regard to planning and development, it would be good for us to hear how we rate or rank compared to other municipalities, perhaps in the region. Sometimes you get comments that perhaps we're slower or perhaps faster than other municipalities or counties in terms of their ability to move projects forward. So I'm not sure City Council has a good sense of that. So if I know that you all you hear the comments and you keep track of that, if you could comment on that, not today, but as we move forward, I think that would be very helpful.
Sure, I would be happy to. And we tried 2 summers ago, we had an intern try to evaluate that, and I can give you more information about that at another time. This slide includes $175,000 dedicated to completing the comprehensive plan. We're going to have some rollover into the next fiscal year to complete the plan, right? It's not going to, final adoption isn't until October, so we'll have a little rollover in costs. And then also to align with your strategic plan objectives 9 and 10 by starting work on the land development code, which is the implementing document for the comp plan. Next slide. The code division budget is flat. There's a reduction in personnel service related to some long-term employees retiring and being replaced. We had 3 retirees that had significant years with the organization that were happy for them to move on into retirement and enjoy the rest of their time in the city. And this budget also includes $595,000 for contractual services, which is what we use for nuisance abatement, wildfire mitigation, hazardous tree mitigation, and we recover a large percentage of those funds through invoices and ultimately, if needed, on the tax roll. There's an additional code officer position is not currently funded. If added, this officer will approve level service and if needed for enforcement of short-term rental program once that's initiated in the next coming months. Next slide. Business tax budget is reduced by 13.6%. Again, we had a long-term employee that retired, and that replacement is at a lower salary.
Did you want to ask, how many code enforcement officers do we currently have, just to give us a reference point, approximately? 9 full-time, 1 part-time. Thank you.
9 full-time, 1 part-time. And then there's 3 animal code officers as well.
3 animal control officers
And 2 urban foresters.
And
right.
my same comment would apply. It would be nice to know, and maybe we all could do our own research as well, how do other cities, in terms of numbers of folks and the geography and population, how that correlates to a number, not unlike the sheriff's report to some extent.
I think that's a little bit more dynamic, Mayor, because not everyone has the same level of code enforcement.
Okay.
I think Barbara told me yesterday, I think that like the county has 1 or 1.5 code officers.
Yes, 1.5.
1.5 code
The audience
officers.
is really on it today, I'll tell you what.
I think we're unique because we don't have as many HOAs. I mean, with all the infill lots, the ITT lots, it makes us a little unique in nature.
That is absolutely
Yeah.
correct, right? We don't need to venture into the HOAs very often.
Right.
Because the HOA does the work of code.
Okay, so strike that last. I'll go ahead and do my own homework and reach out to some folks. Thank you.
Okay. Next slide. Economic Development requests a 22% increase. The 2025 budget continues funding for the UCF Small Business Development Center at $68,000, and full-year funding for a coordinator position, which is only partially funded this year. The candidate screening for that position is concluded, and the interviews are coming up on July the 19th. And next slide.
What position is that? I'm sorry.
It's a Economic Development Coordinator.
Okay, what is that?
It's to assist the Economic Development Manager in his work. It has some marketing, some writing, some being able to prepare reports and interact with the data requests that we get when we're responding to RFIs.
Okay, so literally an assistant to our Economic Development Director.
Correct.
Got it.
This budget includes $161,000 for a strategic action plan objective number 8 to enhance current economic development efforts and attract major employees. Unspent incentive funds from this year, you'll remember we placed incentive funds in case we needed them if a project came up in the 24 budget. They're going to be moved over to the 25 budget to fund this additional. Okay. And any other questions?
I have none.
Anyone? I'm troubled a little bit by the last slide, but I mean, not the theme, but what comes out of the machine at the end of that. It's so as you move forward, if you could be more specific about what I'm looking for a metric, an outcome. In other words, for that money, what do we get?
Yes, sir. Okay. We can go through the budget detail with you and tell you where they align with specific projects.
Thank you.
Okay.
Also, one other thing potentially, I know that the county had recently had a presentation with some of the different business incentives and initiatives that the chamber is trying to have them come on board with, potentially maybe this council, or if it's scheduling conflict of future councils. I think we would benefit from some type of presentation in the same regard.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we plan to give you an annual economic development update. We've historically done that the past 2 years around October, November, and Jason and I are already working on scheduling that.
Cool.
And that'll include a annual report from the Small Business Development Center as well.
Great.
And I apologize, I do have one more question. The planning strategic action plan priority that we budgeted 175,000 for, is this specifically excuse me, having to do with the comp plan? Because it seems to me, when we look at the adopted priority summary, this initiative, I guess, should already be baked into what we're doing, unless we're specifically paying for the comp plan and the LDC reopening and amendment process.
Yes, so the comp plan sets the vision and the policies, and then we need to implement those with the land development code. So you could consider this like almost halfway done, once we have adoption of the comp plan, and then we need those implementing features that'll be located in the land development code. So this is some dollars to finish off the comprehensive plan, but significant dollars to get a consultant to start on the land development code.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Chief Kyle Berryhill will now present the fire department budget.
Play ball.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Kyle Berryhill, Fire Chief, Palm Coast Fire Department. Your fire department plays a large role in executing the City Council focus area of safe and reliable services. In March of this year, we presented an overview of the fire department detailing where we have been, where we are today, and how we're moving forward. We reviewed our belief that effective fire service provision is the result of a three-legged stool, proper station locations, reliable apparatus and equipment, and well-trained staff with the right culture appropriately deployed. The proposed fiscal year 25 budget reflects needs associated with all three essential aspects of fire service provision. The budget plan for Fire Stations 26 and 22 construction will be reflected in our capital budget presentation. However, the department is already experiencing much of the impact associated with these additions, and that is reflected in this budget. The territory expansion that occurred just over a year ago in the Southern Response area increased the latest 12-month call volume to 16,365, up 23% from the last full year where we didn't have this additional territory. This proposal reflects full burdening of 3 positions that were budgeted in the current year for 6 months, EMTs promoting to paramedics throughout the year as they complete the paramedic training, and annual salary increases. It also represents funding training needs in order to maintain the high standard of service provision and to rebuild succession capacity. 15% of this increase, or $240,000, is contingent on receiving revenue not associated with property taxes, right-sizing the projection for state retirement dollars, and a grant for paramedic training. If those numbers are not appropriate, then we don't spend that money. There are no new fire apparatus in this budget. And in fact, Fire Administration cut a planned new engine as part of the new apparatus capital plan. We project that this budget represents the full burden of the staffing needs for the new fire stations, and these firefighters are already serving these neighborhoods. Our internal analysis shows that Station 26 will bring an additional 1,100 residences, there's 600 vacant lots also in this area, into the 5 driving miles required by insurance providers to create savings and choice in the homeowners insurance market, and continue to believe that PCFD not only makes a difference in the lives of our citizens, but protects their choice and wallet with regards to property insurance. Any questions?
Councilwoman?
Chief, my only question is, I see Personnel Services has this little asterisk. Is the 730 what we are anticipating the pension to cost, or does that include I'm trying to get the breakdown of that.
No, ma'am,
personnel.
this is representative of the historical cost associated with our retirement, and you're going to see in your calendar very soon an agenda item related to changing the ordinance that relates to the 175 pension plan, and that will be followed. Once the ordinance is changed, then the data to give us the actual cost of that plan will follow. And I believe Ms. Alves projects that there's almost definitely there'll be a readdress of this budget, like a budget amendment that comes through in order to do that. Whether it'll go up or down is still not determined based on the fact that some of that work has to be completed yet.
Okay, so this is historical.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it, thank you.
Chief, you made a reference to a go, no-go on a spend if it's not necessary. Could you just
Yes, sir.
hit that again for me?
Well, one of the lines, 190,000, is a representative of funding that we receive from the state for pension services. It's a right sizing of what we project that funding to be. If you can see in last year's budget, we received significantly more funding than we projected. So that goes into the pension system and doesn't come out of property tax dollars. And then there's another just over 50,000 associated with a grant proposal to train paramedics. If we get the grant, we spend the money. If we don't get the grant, we don't spend the money.
Got it. Very good. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else?
No, thank you very much for the
Chief, thank you very much for the presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. James Hurst, Park and Recreation Director, will now present the budgets for the Parks and Recreation Division.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. James Hurst, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Morning.
Fire's always a tough one to follow. But Parks and Recreation, we oversee 5 budgets in total. We have the Palm Coast Aquatic Center, our general Parks and Recreation, our Southern Rec Center, the Palm Harbor Golf Club, and our Parks Maintenance. Our goal was to try and remain flat as possible, but as you can see, we've increased it about 4.8% across all budgets. This additional increase is just due to some services, additional services that we do, programs, and expanding some hours as operations for our facilities. So we'll start with Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation, we are proposing a 4.5 increase. A lot of this expenditures are through our operating budget. A lot of that is contributed to our electric and water bills. We did raise that by $20,000, obviously with the splash pad coming on, and our field lighting. And then we also are looking to revive some of our programs through our recreational activity budget that we kind of disbanded during COVID or as COVID hit. So we are looking to revive those at some requests from the people in our community. And then also we see an increase in our grant line item as well. We increased it by $27,000. $20,000 went to the cultural arts program. That is to continue to promote our arts and those organizations. And then our Historical Society grant increased by $7,000, started at $3,000, and then is increased to $10,000. Any questions?
Just a point of reference, City Manager. So FC3, how does that relate to the $20,000 that?
We're actively working with FC3 for them to manage our cultural arts grant process. If you recall, this grant has been with this city for almost since the establishment of the city. A few years ago, it was up to $50,000. Last year, it was reduced to budget expenditures to $20,000. We've increased it to $40,000, and we're asking FC3 to manage that grant process. And then, Mayor and City Council, you received an email requesting an increase in the Historical Society grant that we give them, and we've accommodated that request as well in this budget.
Okay, and so, I mean, I guess that's clear. So what we're asking is that someone else, this other party would manage the grants, the assignment of the funds.
Yes, also because they're going to add this to their collective pot. They are the LAA for Flagler County, which is the local arts agency, so they get money from the state. So it broadens the pot for the arts organizations in the community to have a better chance on putting on these programs.
Because they're a county entity. They can go after the funding from the state. Now, will they be invited to make a presentation to City Council?
Yes, James has that on the schedule for August.
Okay, thank you.
They will attend, and then we have an agreement coming to the City Council. Yeah. So the next one is the Palm Coast Aquatic Center. Again, we kind of remain flat. The 2.3 increase is mainly to our personnel services. We are planning to stay a seasonal pool between February and November, but we do want to increase an extra day or so or some hours during that non-traditional summertime. So we're looking between February and May, we would look to probably maybe add a Saturday or something for our residents. And this is kind of based on some feedback we have received from our pool goers and the need to kind of be open another day. So right now, during these times, we were open from Sunday through to Thursday, closed pretty much Friday, Saturday. And then, so we're trying to alleviate and kind of address those needs there. And then our operating expenditures, we did find some funding for this year to purchase some thermal blankets that cover the pool during our winter months. Next, we have the Southern Recreation Center. We are proposing a 17.9% increase, mainly due to, again, expanding some hours at the facility on the weekends. We currently close at 2 p.m. We have heard from residents and users of the facility that they would like weekends to be a little bit longer than 2 p.m. And then we also actually, in addition to our men's 15K futures tournament, USTA has decided, or not decided, but has requested that we host the women's 35K futures tournament, which the difference is the prize money. Larger prize money brings better players, more prestige. So that's something that we're working with the USTA now. We pretty much have set some dates, but this is when we see our operating budget here, that is to cover those costs, porta potties, tents, things like that. This is a really cool opportunity that we have. And then also we're looking to kind of expand on our already awesome programs that we've got there. We're looking to more exclusive programs and then kind of getting some youth programs. We do have some tennis. Now we're trying to work on the pickleball youth programs and then also some new programs within the center itself.
City Manager, I have a question. At some point, how do we compare forecast revenues from this facility versus the increase in expenses? It's a little bit out of context for me. So will we get to that point where you'll have that for us?
Sure, we can look at dedicated revenues for Parks and Rec programs and facilities as it relates to their budgets. We can provide that to you.
All right, because again, just to look at an increase without knowing especially with a new facility, if we
It
don't have a big
is-
history on it.
Sure, it's in your general overview of revenues, but we can give you that breakdown per facility.
Thank you.
We can get that by fiscal year too.
I agree, because I would presume if we're expanding hours, that includes expanding the ability for people to rent those rooms.
Correct,
for
yes,
longer as
yeah.
well. Okay, and do you all know yet what you're looking at as far as expanded hours on the weekend?
We're probably looking more to about 6, 7 o'clock.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And if I can chime in, number one, I think that the expanded hours are awesome and needed. That facility can totally rock on the weekends. But number two, I think there's a potential safety improvement at the SRC as well for those outside pickleball courts. It gets really super duper hot out there.
Yeah.
And if there's something maybe like fans that can be mounted on the fences in like the corridor or
Okay.
a cool zone, which is just like a mister that can spray some people. Because all ages play out there, and I've seen some pretty, veteran players get a little too hot. And
Yeah.
it's a long ways to the water fountain, which is all the way on the other side of the facility. And that's, it can seem like a 5-mile walk if you're having a heat stroke. So to be able to get some reprieve out there would be awesome.
Yeah, our team continues to try and address those issues. And with the curtain that we have out there as well, our team is going to work on pretty much, I think this week the top is kind of connected. So we're trying to make it more of a curtain.
That'd be awesome.
So then the breeze can come through too. And then we'll close it during rain time. So.
Yes, James?
Yeah.
When do you expect that they're going to be expanding the hours at the Southern Recreation Center?
This would start October. If the budget was approved, yes, it'd be October. Yeah. Next one is the Palm Harbor Golf Club. We actually reduced our budget by 3.1%, mainly due to personnel changes. As we did our analysis, we decided to just, reduce those personal services and a little bit of our operating services as well. We do have 2 unfunded fleet requests. The golf debris blower is kind of a combination of a greens roller and a blower. That is, the current blower we have now is about 15 or so years old, so the maintenance on it is daily. But this does keep conditions of the course and the greens prime. And then also for our fleet replacement is our Groundsmaster 4500. That piece of equipment is around 8 years old as well. We think we could probably get another year or so from it. But that's also, that kind of continues to keep our conditions awesome at that facility. And then lastly is our park maintenance. So our park maintenance, as you know, we maintain the 13 parks. We have 2 dog parks, the trails, 26 fields, and then we just added the splash pad as of last week, which was really cool to see. But, we do have some increase in operating expenditures to cover the splash pad, but also cover our Lehigh Trail dog park and our trailhead. and then also Waterfront Park as well. We see in our personal services there that our field maintenance supervisor, he was part of our Parks and Recreation general budget. We transferred him over to park maintenance as it makes more sense with the change of his duties. It used to be athletics and field maintenance, now it's just field maintenance. So we thought we'd throw them into this budget line here. We do have 3 unfunded personnel requests. This was outlined in our Parks Master Plan and our maintenance analysis. It was recommended we try to have 3 employees to reach our goal of around 9 employees to cover the expected level of service that we got through the analysis. But as we kind of looked at it, and it was a combined about $170,000, we thought it may be a big ask for this budget. So our team is working hard on combining forces, and they're working together to kind of continue the level of service that's expected by our residents. So for example, our Lehigh Trailhead, for the dog park, our field maintenance guys are actually going to be the ones taking care of that. Nice flat surface, nice flat ground. I think it's perfect for them to come in and, maintain that dog park. So we're trying to combine services so that our level of service to our community is not reduced at all. So, and that, I think, is it. Any other questions for Parks and Recreation?
I have a question. The groundskeepers, what do they cover? Do they cover parks, trails, fields, everything?
Yeah, so the 3 here would actually be, one would be Parks and Trails, one would be field maintenance, and the other one would be the Southern Rec Center. We already have someone at the Southern Rec Center, but as we hit into phase 2 a little bit as well, it's expanding. It requires, it's a lot for one person. They have to groom 10 courts as it is, and then our Parks and Trail team actually comes in on Thursdays and does the ground maintenance, but we're adding another few courts there, so it's going to, so they'll be grooming 15 courts along with just weeding, landscaping, checking irrigation, checking court irrigation. So that's where the 3 come from. Yeah.
So if we're not able to fund all 3, but we choose to fund 1, what is the priority? And is there any type of cross-training that can occur to make them more efficient?
Yeah, I think our priority would be I would have to say the Southern Rec Center. It is a big facility, but we are able to cross-train. A lot of our guys already kind of know how to groom the courts anyway. So we have been doing cross-training pretty much across the board all year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thanks, James.
Matt Mansell, Director of Public Works, will present the streets maintenance budget as well as the facilities internal service budget.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
Morning.
So for FY25, Streets Maintenance Division is requesting a 7.4% increase in the overall budget for the streets, for that division. This request is primarily driven by the higher insurance and personnel services cost, as well as a need to expand our operational budget to address increased demands for road and citywide concrete repairs. Additionally, there's a slight rise for cost in our landscape maintenance chemicals and pesticides, and a slight increase in our electric bill for the expanded street lighting program. Although this budget request does not include any increase in personnel, our department overview presentation did highlight the growth in landscape and infrastructure that we maintain. You can see that reflected in our unfunded personnel position requests on the slide in front of you. We had requested 2 additional equipment operators / groundskeepers for the department to help us with that workload. The budget also brings back 2 of the frozen positions from last year's budget that would assist us with that landscaping maintenance as we go into some of these revitalization and expansion programs within our medians and roadways. Any questions on the street maintenance?
I have a question.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
is can you describe kind of the difference between what the 2 equipment operators would do versus the 2 grounds maintenance workers?
So really, that's just a classification. It's kind of a generic term for equipment operator. We could hire someone to come in and to operate our tractor with the large mower behind it versus someone that would just be on a small mower. So it just gives us a little more leeway to hire a specialized position versus a general landscape position.
Okay, so, and I apologize if it feels like I'm belaboring this, but I'm looking at the cost difference. So if
Right.
one is more of a generalist or not specialized than the other, it seems like that was opposite. So to me, the equipment operators seem like they would be more specialized, but the cost is less.
So I believe the two that we requested were at the lower pay grade. They'd be starting positions.
Okay.
The two grounds maintenance workers are funded all the way up to the top of that auto promote pay band. So depending on who we hired and what experience they had, that would be the most that line would, those two positions would cost us. If we hired them at a pay grade 9, it would be a lower amount.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Mhm. All right.
And I'm sorry, just for clarification, I know because some of the other presentations say that the frozen personnel wasn't hired last year, but is this year. So is this already worked into this year's budget or no?
Yes,
It is, okay.
the two positions that are under FY '24 frozen personnel, they are already included in our budget.
For 2025?
25.
Got it,
Correct.
thank you.
Next. Okay, so this shows our current internal positions for our facilities management division. As you can see, we're also not requesting any increase in that area. So for FY '25, the facilities management budget request is largely consistent with our FY '24 budget, reflecting only a modest 0.6% increase. This slight rise is attributed to the increased personnel services costs. Notably, the budget does not account for any increase in personnel. However, in coming fiscal years, we anticipate a rise in maintenance responsibilities following the expiration of the Southern Rec Center warranty. And additionally, we project future budget impacts as new facilities would come online, such as the two projected fire stations. Any questions on facilities management?
I'm done.
All right.
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Matt.
much.
Thank you, Matt. Doug Akins, Director of IT, will present the Information Technology Operations budget.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
Doug Akins, IT Director. The IT department currently has 22.5 FTEs. These professionals specialize in various disciplines, including network and systems administration, cybersecurity, application administration, GIS, service desk, programming, and more. The half FTE is an employee that is shared between the IT internal services and IT enterprise budgets. There are no new positions funded for IT in the upcoming fiscal year. The budget for the current fiscal year is set at $6,245,261, with our projected expenditures for the year coming in at $6,078,495. The proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year is $6,894,836 for an increase of 10.4%. The IT internal services budget is allocated to the other city departments, and so you will see the charges for these services reflected in their budgets. Several factors contribute to this year's proposed increase. One is the transfer of expenses from other funds into ITs as we continue to consolidate technology purchases into our budget. These are expenses that are already existed in the organization and are now being reflected in IT's budget. Additionally, there is an increase in replacement equipment for devices that are out of warranty or at the end of their life cycle. This number varies yearly as devices across the organization reach their replacement age. Cost increases from vendors, such as software providers, and improvements to our customer service call center platform to enhance service to residents also contribute to the increase. There are 3 unfunded position requests for the IT internal services budget: a programmer, an infrastructure administrator, and an applications administrator. The programmer position aligns closely to a council strategic action plan priority, which we'll discuss later. The infrastructure division of IT is responsible for maintaining the city's entire technology infrastructure. As the city adds new facilities, such as the Southern Rec Center and 2 new fire stations, there is more technology infrastructure to maintain and support. Additionally, the infrastructure division is largely responsible for our cybersecurity activities and initiatives. At current staffing levels, important and time-sensitive tasks are often delayed. The addition of another staff member would help accomplish these tasks more effectively and advance our security initiatives. Application administrators support, configure, and manage software applications used throughout the city. This includes platforms that are used citywide, like our Enterprise Resource Platform, or ERP, and programs used by specific departments or teams. There are existing features of products and platforms the city already owns that would help with internal communications, collaboration, and business process reengineering, but current staff don't have the capacity to take on these projects. An additional staff member in this area may also be needed to support SAP Priority 7, which we'll discuss shortly. Next slide. The IT department has an active role in Strategic Action Plan Priorities 6 and 7. Part of Priority 6 is to explore the creation of a mobile application to increase citizen engagement. Developing this application in-house would allow the city to customize and optimize its communication with residents. While current IT staff have the necessary skills and qualifications to accomplish this, they would not be able to complete it within 18 to 24 months due to existing projects. Ongoing maintenance and updates will also require staff time after the app is released. Adding another programmer would enable us to support this priority and other existing projects more effectively. For priority number 7, most of the work needed this upcoming year will be staff time researching and creating a technology improvement plan. However, additional staff, such as the applications administrator mentioned before, may be needed in the future if the plan calls for supporting additional software or large-scale migrations of existing platforms. Do you have any questions on the IT budget?
So I'm hearing that the programmer is the position that you're requesting that is most closely aligned with our strategic action plan.
Number 6, yes, ma'am, for the creation of the mobile app.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
And Doug, the monies to explore new mobile applications, can you define that a little bit better? What does that mean? What does the end product look like?
That was related to the SAP priority number 6, and the purpose of the mobile app is to enhance the communication with the residents, to customize the experience they receive, so it's more streamlined and customized to them and helps us to interact with them in a more efficient manner.
So is this kind of carrying the website on your phone and having the
a more
same
streamlined
interaction?
version, correct, yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So you have a special goal to reach. It's not just an exploratory discussion here,
That's
right?
correct,
Okay.
yes, sir.
I have a question, and this kind of crosses over into communications. If we're looking at funding a position of this nature, communications is also asked for funding to help increase or improve communications with residents. Is there any crossover there? Are we maybe doubling down on efforts unnecessarily? Can we, excuse me, sorry about that. What's the difference between those two, and are both needed this year in order to achieve the goals laid out in our strategic action plan?
Sure. So we look at them as two separate approaches. While they may be connected to the same priority, they're two separate tactics, right? The mobile application is more of that push notifications, reaching residents, giving them a streamlined version of events, programs, attachments to the website, et cetera. And then with communications, it's more of correcting some of the misinformation that you see in various platforms and avenues, right? There's a lot more technology now that you're trying to get out there and get the right information out, and it just becomes very difficult to put all of that information all at the same time. And different styles of communication attached to people differently, right? My generation might be a little bit different than someone else who comes to the community center and still brings in the newspaper clippings of, I want to do this or register for that. So we as the city need to make sure that all of the information is getting to those who are wanting to receive it.
And thank you for that. In the application that we're looking at developing, are we also, and Doug, maybe you can answer this for me, are we also looking to allowing people to file work orders, complaints, things of that nature through that platform?
Yes, absolutely. We are, our first goal is to figure out what would be a best minimal viable product to release, and then to continue to build on it. So our assumption is that that work order creation piece would be in that first release of the product. It's very critical to what we're looking to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good.
All right, Doug, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Lauren Johnston, our acting city manager, will present the requests that are currently not funded.
So Mayor and City Council, as you noticed on each of the slides through the department's budget presentations, there were various additional staff requests that were not funded this year. All of them do have attachments to your strategic action plan, and we're seeking council's consensus on which path that you would like to move forward. And in the next slide, we show various options of how you can fund those requests. We can partially fund some of the staffs associated to those strategic action plan priorities. There's a lot of discussion about additional funding needed to go to your street pavement program or unfunded capital projects like the maintenance and operations complex or the fire stations. There's option 3, which is also in your strategic action plan, is looking at decreasing the millage. And then option 4 is holding that funding in contingency and giving us an answer on how to move forward at a future time. So wanted to give this to City Council for your pleasure of directing staff of how you would like to move forward.
Sure. One question. Because we operate at economies of scale, the $615,000, and I'm sorry I didn't ask this question yesterday during our meeting, but how would that be like an additional mile of paving? Because I know it's a lot of money to be able to get these guys out there, and then, you know, it kind of, I don't want to say exponentially gets less expensive to continue paving, but that $615,000, is that one additional mile of paving, or is that potentially, you know, more than 1 mile of paving? I'm not sure.
That is definitely a Carl Cody question.
It's a Carl question. Hey, Carl, the $615,000, if we were to allocate that to the streets pavement program, how many miles of additional roads do you foresee being able to be paved with that?
It would depend on if we were going to do residential or arterial roadways. Right now, we're on track to keep the arterials going at the current PCI, so those dollars we would put towards our residential road. Right now, in next year's proposed budget, we have about $1 million in the global treatment, the microsurfacing. So we do have residential roads that need milling and resurfacing. So depending on whether to do milling and resurfacing or additional global treatments would determine how many we do. I would say we do about, I'd have to go back and check our current bids as to how many miles that would do. You know, I know in the past it was about $50,000 per lane mile for residential roads, but I need to double check that figure to see if that's still current.
Sure, I appreciate that. I think that'd be just good food for thought because $615,000 in paving doesn't necessarily equate to, you know, what we would actually see as output. So I appreciate that a lot. I guess the global treatments also, since they're more kind of, I don't want to say spot treatments, but I guess it would be a different application too. So I think that
we can do more. We can do more with global treatments, but we do have residential roads that are in bad shape that do need a full milling and resurfacing. And we also talked about doing some pilot studies on the residential collector roads for next year to stripe them and do some narrow lanes. So, you know, we could target that money towards some of those residential collector roads to do more of them, or if we do the one and we find out it's beneficial, we could then go ahead and do additional.
Excellent. Thank you for that information.
Thank you. Comment?
No.
Just really quickly, so just from a kind of conceptual standpoint, well, I have a question on if we were to decrease the millage rate by the .0643, what would that translate to dollar-wise for a homesteaded property in Palm Coast? On average.
You got to pick a number.
So per 100,000 of value, right? Approximately $6.
$6 per 100,000 in value.
That is correct.
Okay. I agree with you, Councilman Clufus. I think we would see kind of a minuscule or minimal result if we use this money for paving. I will tell you where my head's at, just for transparency, is I want to see more boots on the ground in our city. I think that it's really important that our residents see everything from more law enforcement to more groundskeepers to more people just out doing what our city does best, which is make our city beautiful and increase the quality of life. So that's kind of where I'm leaning right now as far as, you know, if we're going to fund personnel. Our crews work incredibly hard, so to maybe give them a little bit more support. They work on the weekends, they're on call oftentimes, so I would like to see us kind of look at maybe funding some of those positions to give a little bit of reprieve and support to continue to help our city give that good quality level of service that our residents have come to enjoy and expect. Yep, thank you to all the staff too for the presentations.
So because we got to kind of go down the line here, so from staff's point of view, you feel some support for option number one, if I heard that correctly?
There is some, yes.
Some, okay. I mean, I'll go to, I'd like to see a blend of 1 and 3, would be the general direction, because I think staff is asking us for some direction today to further forecast the budget. So I think I would look at each of those positions very, very carefully. Certainly not, I'm not in favor of all of them, but there are some I think that are strategic. And option number 3, I think we've set the precedent. I think we should follow that path forward, but a blend of those two. That would be my suggestion today. How do you feel about?
When you say set the precedent, what do you mean exactly?
Well, in terms of reducing millage.
Right.
That we can.
And I do have a question. What would be the full millage rate rollback number?
That's on the next slides.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's coming up
Yes.
next?
Mhm.
Hold on, should
We can-
Foreshadow.
right there.
We can go to that. So the fiscal year 2024 adopted rate was 4.2570. The rolled back rate for fiscal year 2025 is 3.9961.
So that 3.9961 would basically keep everybody's ad valorem the same as it was the previous year. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
So do you want to weigh in on which of the options or combination?
I
Only because
take-
staff kind of needs some direction,
I
or we'll give
really
it.
take a different perspective
Okay.
to what we're doing here.
Okay.
And I really, because it's so hard for us to micromanage everything. We don't work in each department. We don't know what each need is. We're more like a board of directors, is how I see us. And we have a CEO, and that CEO is sitting right to the right of me here, the city manager. And that CEO has department heads. And I see us setting a financial sort of framework for that CEO, an expectation from us. Whatever that millage rate is that we pick is that expectation. I don't see us micromanaging things. And to me, this becomes very cumbersome because it's impossible for us to do. Like any board of directors, you pass down this sort of expectation, this framework, this guidance. You expect your CEO to go to the CEO's department heads and make that happen. So I really have a hard time blending this in here because we're not really that immersed in every single detail. I mean, generic things like you said, more boots on the ground. I certainly understand giving that, seeing that, letting our public see that we're out there working and doing things and stuff. But I really just don't want to tie our CEO's hands. I really want to see us set the direction and the expectations, and then let our CEO do the job with her staff. And that's kind of where I'm at on this. So I'm not going to pick and choose from door number 1 or door number 2 or door number 3.
So are you?
I find that difficult to do.
Okay, so are you suggesting, staff does need some direction here. So are you suggesting a different form or format? In other words, how do you want to share your input with your CEO?
What I'm suggesting here is that our job is to protect our taxpayers. And our taxpayers have been hurt enough this year, especially from Biden and Bidenomics and the administration in Washington and the cost of living and the price of gas and the price of food and the price of everything because of the failure of the Biden administration. And if folks don't see that now after that last debate, I can't help you. But the bottom line is we have folks out there that are on fixed incomes, that are struggling, that are hurting, that, you may say, well, we're just going to raise your taxes another $500 or $600 a year. Well, to a lot of people, that's a lot of money. And they have to make choices then of what not to buy. Which medication do they not get renewed? That's one that we have a problem with here in our community because of our elderly citizens. So in my view, our biggest responsibility is rolling back that millage rate and then letting our CEO and her staff figure out where to make cuts, where to spend money, how to budget it. We can't micromanage each department. They want to institute a few hires that we didn't do last time. I don't know if we need those people or not. I don't know if we need a lot of things. because we're not there every day doing that job. So my direction here is for us, I'm in full support of a complete millage rate rollback. And then let our staff, who knows what they're doing, figure out how to make it work. Because I can't.
Okay, Councilwoman?
So I hear what you're saying, but I think that it's a little contradictory, to be honest with you, with positions that you've taken previously on the transparency in the budget process. And I think that's one of the issues that we've heard from our public is that we need more transparency. We need to know where the dollars and cents are actually going. So I think the approach that staff has taken has been a direct result of what they've heard from this dais and what they've heard from the public, which is we want to know where the dollars and cents are going. So by them coming forward and saying, hey, we want this operator, we want this programmer, we want this person in this position, I get what you're saying from the standpoint of we don't want to micromanage, but at the same time, they've already been through, I've talked to each one of them about their asks and why they need it, and they've already been through a stringent process with our CEO, our city manager, about, listen, no, don't even bother asking about XYZ because we don't need it. So they've already gone through that process. And please, Lauren, I don't want to speak for you. You can speak for yourself. But to me, I commend them for taking this approach because they're letting us know specifically, I'm not just asking you for $150,000 to do what I please. I'm asking it from you because this is what we do need. So I actually commend the approach that has been taken. Now, with regards to the full rollback, first of all, what we heard from Helena was that it would be roughly $6 per 100,000. So we're not talking about $500,000, $600,000.
That's $6 a month, right? We're not talking about a year.
No, that's a year.
That would be on an annual basis.
That's a year, right.
Just a $6 increase.
Per 100,000.
And I think the average home here is now $350, right? So we're looking at a $22, $23 increase on a property tax bill per year. I am not minimizing that. I understand that every dollar counts. I'm not minimizing that. But I refuse to set aside the fact that half of the increase in our budget this year is because of public safety. So we have an increase in the sheriff's budget, we have an increase in the fire budget, and I'm not willing to sacrifice public safety. And from what I hear from the public, they're not willing to sacrifice that either. So if we did the full rollback, Vice Mayor, how do we pay for the increase in the police contract? How do we pay for the increase in the fire contract? Those are the issues that we have to figure out before we can it's easy to say, yeah, I support a full rollback. I would love to support a full rollback, but how do we get there? Bring me there.
Well, first place, let's go to the transparency thing. Yes, we do this every year. Every year since I've been sitting here, we do this, and we need to be transparent, and the public needs to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is part of the process. I'm not criticizing that part of the process, okay? What I am saying, though, is we are not in a position to micromanage.
I agree.
So you're saying it's only $6 more per 100,000, so I'm saying it's $6 less per 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't somehow find a way to make that up in our entire whole budget process?
So there's the direction that staff needs. So if that's the way, I agree, so we're getting there. So if we can be specific, it doesn't have to be at this moment, but so if we can be specific about the things that we tell them that we're not interested in doing, and that's going to equate to that number, I mean, we can get there. I'm just trying to make sure staff has correct direction here, because they're relying on us for that. So let's just hear from everybody else.
No, just
Yeah.
so I understand, I
Go ahead.
understand the direction, and
Yeah.
I wish I could give them more specific, like I want to see you cut here,
No,
and I
and
want to see you increase here.
The micromanage comment, I get it.
Micromanage
I
like
understand,
that.
I
And I just
understand.
want to say one other thing, Ms.
Yep.
Pontieri, and I mean this honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to say, just cut, but it's also easy to say, just spend. And I think that's what we need to avoid. I think we need to give that direction of here's where we're at, as a council, as a board, to the head of our company, basically, our CEO.
I would just like to hear how it would affect us and the citizens if we did a full rollback. What would happen?
So if I could, so let's try to be more specific. So I think the question, if I may,
Okay.
would be, if full rollback were considered, what list of things are going to fall off of the strategic action plan and then the budget presentation? Is that clear enough?
Sure.
And I don't want to
That's clear.
speak your question for you, but I'm trying to.
That's fine.
So many of the items in your strategic action plan would have to be delayed or deferred to a future year because we wouldn't have the staffing to accommodate that request. The only new position request was the Flagler County Sheriff's contract, so we would have to reevaluate those positions. And then the positions that were or frozen or looking to unfreeze, we would have to delay or defer those people, boots on the ground, et cetera. So a lot of the things would not be accommodated in this current budget that we've presented to you today.
So I think that my question would be, are we willing to sacrifice that in terms of our community and our city? Kind of similar to what Councilwoman Pontieri has brought up. Are we willing to sacrifice those things in lieu of making sure that we have our safety and making sure that we have our fire department operating up to speed?
Councilman?
Sure. So my position, I do identify with trying to, get our trim rate back to a rollback rate, but I think that falls apart in perpetuity, or inevitably are we trying to get to a 0% millage tax rate? At what point do we draw the line to say, hey, here are our city services that we need to be able to render to be able to maintain the level of service that we expect in Palm Coast? I know that it has been a tough year for a lot of people, but on the other hand, we can look at it as, markets are basically at an all-time high. Social Security had an 8.5%, 9% adjustment. I think the $6 per $100,000 of taxable value, is that on a homesteaded or non-homesteaded home?
Just to clarify, the $6 is referencing the reduction of the $615,000. So it would be per 100 of taxable value. So if you're a homesteaded property, your value would only go up by 3%, right?
So that applies to everyone. Gotcha, because we're going the other way, and there's no cap on going down.
Right. There's no cap on the downside.
There's no cap on that, which is a good thing. But it's my perspective that an option 1 and option 3 shows that we are still trying to reduce the overall burden on our taxpayers. Because if we look at it, honest to God, this is the real thing we got to take away here, is if we adjust for inflation, people are paying less today than they were 5 years ago in city taxes. And that's something that I think city services, we can all agree, we offer far more city services today, and I think we do so at a higher level than ever before. So when we look at it from that prerogative, I think an option 1 and an option 3 shows both best faith for our delegate that we're trying to be responsible with their money, but then also option 1 that we're taking care of the things that we're investing in. Specifically, some of the newer facilities that we have that need additional upkeep. I think that is a reasonable balance between the two, and I think that's one that the public would understand and be accommodating of.
So at this point, what I'm going to suggest, because you have a variety of opinions here, you've heard City Council, I would ask you to do an interview with each City Council person to explain the net effect of what is not going to be done due to the decreased millage and or going all the way to the rollback suggestion. And I think you need to have that conversation with each one of us. It may be part of your regular weekly communication, but I think that's appropriate at this time if I get a consensus, if that works.
That works.
Yeah.
But it's a starting point.
And I have one more question. When, in those interviews, would you be able to explain whether each of the requested positions does attach to a strategic action priority so that we can ensure, we all came to a consensus on that strategic action priority, including trying to do a rollback. So I would like to see which of those attaches to that, because I think that those would be the most appropriate in order to get consensus from the board.
And I think it's important we understand, just because on the strategic action, yes, we all came to a consensus on, it's kind of like our wish list.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't always get everything you want.
Right.
At some point, depending on your financial situation, you start checking things off of it for this year, and you hope you get them next year.
Exactly.
So I don't want our feet to be held to the fire on every single
Understood.
item on that. I mean, I wish I had a magic wand and I could make all that money appear and grant everything, but we don't.
Right.
And again, I have to emphasize, and God, I've met a lot of people since I started on knocking on doors last October for my campaign. And a lot of them are seniors. And I hear a lot of stories of just how they are crunched. You know, home insurance alone, car insurance. I mean, it's enormous. And if we have homes, we get those bills. They're huge. Everything. Every time you go into a grocery store, it's shocking. So I really, 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 you know, we're talking about, you know, yes, we need public safety. And I support our sheriff fully, and I support our firefighters.
Sure.
Those are my two top priorities.
Okay.
Everything below that, we have to take a look at.
So the below that is the interview
Below
with
that,
city
yes.
manager to help you get to a, not a scorecard, but a priority list amongst the 5 city council members, and then we'll come back and finalize. Is that sufficient direction for today?
Yes, Mayor, understood.
Everybody good with that? Okay. Councilman Clufus, did you have another comment, or you? Very good. Okay. Thank you, Helena. That certainly gives us a starting point, as you had said, and I think everybody's kind of expressed their notions to move this forward. Just keep in mind that we are in July, and remember that October date is looming, which is a, you know, do not pass a go date. So there is some time, but we're going to have to be diligent to make sure that we get to a budget that we all can digest. Very good. Thank you, ladies.
You're welcome. So we will be back on July 16th, which is next Tuesday, with the resolution to adopt the maximum millage rate. That's the next item on the agenda. And
everyone understands the implication of that. So once we adopt that max, it's like, should conversations move, that's a number that can no longer be breached. It's like that's your ceiling at that point.
Can't go higher.
Correct. That's just part of the formality of budgeting with the state.
So we could adopt the full rollback millage rate as the maximum rate, and then we wouldn't have to have any conversation about it.
As long as we understand the implications of that first, which is the purpose of the interviews. Because what you want to make sure, and I think you've said this as well, you wouldn't want to dip into public safety. So we just have to be sure and clear that this would not affect
I think
public safety or fire or anything else. We've got to be very careful with that,
Public
yeah.
safety is
As you had
where
said.
the line is drawn is public safety.
For you. Mhm.
Yes, for me.
Yep.
And then everything below that is fair game.
Okay, ladies, thank you.
Thank you.
We now move to agenda item 2 under, I'm sorry, you know what, we're going to have, we should really have public comment at this point in time, I think. So I will, based on the presentation that was made this morning, are there any members of the public that would like to make public comment at this time?
Peter Johnson, Palm Coast Mayor Council. I agree with a lot of what was said up here as far as prioritizing our public safety. The Sheriff's Office Fire Department is critical for the growth of the city as we incur more residents to make sure that we're on top of the numbers that we need to be. I share a lot of the sentiment that some of the council members spend, that if you do the full millage rollback rate, that is going to eventually pose challenges for future funding, as we already have that. I emphasize this again, the homestead exemption that's also being proposed is going to be an additional aspect to funding for our city. And $6 doesn't sound, or $22 doesn't sound like a lot per household, but when you have 40,000 households, that number becomes significant. So any sort of dip into our funding sources is a major threat to our city's financial stability. That being said, spending also has to be curtailed at the same time, and some of these positions that I see, to refer to what Mr. Danko said, under the line in the sand, do seem a little bit excessive, but we have had some of those positions that have also been asked for directly by the residents, specifically with additional to code enforcement, specifically with some of the other stuff, not so much the communications, but I get that stance too. There's a lot of things that have to be taken into this. I think the interview process, so that everyone is on the same page, and quite frankly, everyone understands how our taxes are assessed on a yearly basis and not monthly, would be a great addition to the conversation so that everyone just gets where we're at. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other members of the public want to comment on that presentation? Seeing no one come forward, then we'll move to presentation number 2, which is a resolution setting a proposed maximum millage trim rate and setting the first tentative budget hearing date, time, and location for the fiscal year 2024. So it's a little bit redundant, but okay.
Barbara Grossman, Code Enforcement Manager for the City of Palm Coast. Good morning, Mayor, City Council. Today's agenda items relate to the 2024 nuisance abatement initial assessment. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on. So yes, that resolution is what we will bring to council on Tuesday with your proposed maximum millage rate, and we will adjust depending on Ms. Johnson's discussions with council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll start over. Good morning, Mayor, City Council. Today's agenda item relates to...
I'm sorry, Barbara, one more interruption. Sorry, council.
I'm so sorry. Just want to make sure you're tracking the agenda. We've moved on to a different agenda item now with Ms.
Yes, I mentioned that we're number 2. I think I read it.
We're on number
I'm sorry,
three
number
now.
3 now. Thank you. So we are now discussing on the agenda, item E, number 3 under presentations, Resolution 2024 approving the nuisance abatement initial assessment. Sorry for the...
Gee,
for the
Barbara,
pressure.
I thought you got some kind of huge promotion there all of a sudden, and you were going to handle the budget. I was going to congratulate you.
Go ahead.
Wow. Hi. Good morning again,
Yes,
Mayor,
that's it.
City Council. Today's agenda item relates to the 2024 nuisance abatement initial assessment. It's required by law to conduct an initial assessment hearing and a final assessment hearing. In 2010, City Council adopted an ordinance for the creation of an assessment area and authorized the imposition of nuisance abatement assessment to be included in the annual non-ad valorem tax bill sent to you through the county tax collector where the city abated a nuisance. Every year, the city is required to prepare a preliminary initial assessment and the final assessment rolls. Today's items is to present to council the initial assessment roll, which will be brought to you on July 16th for adoption. For your convenience of the residents, staff will continue to collect payments through August 27th, 2024. The final assessment roll will be updated for council's consideration for the September 3rd, 2024 business meeting. The types of public nuisance violations covered under the ordinance are wildfire mitigation, hazardous trees, unsecured structures such as house, pools. This could be broken windows or damaged doors. And you know we had an incident at 94 Forsyth, which immediately after we had access from the Sheriff's Department, we were there to board up front doors, garages, put stuff in garages. So those things come up and they have to be taken care of immediately. The bulk trash of unoccupied dwellings from a move-out or an eviction, and illegal dumping. People tend to want to use vacant lots to, instead of going to the dump to get rid of, and that we have to take care of. For example, illegal dumping when the yard waste or accumulations of some type of unoccupied lots. Since 2012, the city has collected $1,135,070 from the non-ad valorem nuisance abatement assessment. The total bill is greater as there's times that the years will roll over. It could be in one year and they pay in the next year. They could, and their arrears are up to the 3-year status. When a tax deed occurs, depending on the amount of surplus the city may receive after applying in a tax deed situation some of the amount owed. At this time, it's $131,619.35. We do expect it to go down because we will take payments up until August 27th before bringing it back to council. Any questions?
So I guess the question I would have is, I mean, this conversation seems to come very close to the discussion we're also going to be having on short-term vacation rentals. And I don't know if that's been a part of your thinking, or is that completely separate from the numbers and the thoughts that you had? Because a lot of those issues are closely tied to the complaints that we're getting for the vacation rentals.
As far as any public nuisance, whether it is a vacation rental or it is a regular property, we would take care of it in the same manner. So if there was any type of, if there was a move out on a short term, or somebody left, unexpectedly, and they left all of their paraphernalia there and it's put out to the curb. What we do with the rental registration is, that's why we have them rental registered, so that we can get with the property management to get action as fast as we can. Most of the time, the property management takes care of the issue. But again, it wouldn't matter if it were on whatever property it is, we still would abate it.
So I'm just trying to reel this in so that we're not approaching the problem from different directions. In other words, is this a channel from which we can attack the short-term vacation rental problem to find a solution or not? Council, I'm kind of looking for some help here.
I mean, I think that definitely there needs to be some more teeth to our approach with STRs and code enforcement. I think we expressed that last week and even spoke about having somebody dedicated, at least part-time, to just enforcing the rules with short-term rentals. So I agree that, to the extent we can take this same approach, absolutely we should.
And, Ms. Mayor, I thought you were talking to Lauren.
I did too.
No, I'm sorry, no, I'll get there in a minute. No, I'm talking amongst us. And so the one thing I would add to that, Councilwoman, is I'd also, think about the property owner. I think we've mentioned that before. The actual tenant is kind of a fleeting
Yes,
issue.
that-
It's the owner or the property management company that, I'm trying to make sure that you're directing your efforts there as well.
But, well, as per 162, the property owner is the ultimate responsible
Okay.
party. The liaison between code enforcement and the property owner is the property management.
Yeah, no, and I agree with Councilwoman Pontieri said, we have to have more teeth, and obviously that has to go towards the property owner ultimately, if we're going to see any results. And I can tell you, talking to a lot of people last week, very, very pleased that we're moving forward on this. Very pleased that our hands have been untied, and it's been a problem, so.
It would be very nice if the penalty structure were such that it could pay for whatever additional boots on the ground or upgrade you would need, if that could, in the long term, pay for itself or better somehow.
And we're researching that right now, and we'll
Okay.
get back to you with it, yes.
We shouldn't have to pay to clean up somebody else's mess, basically.
Jen?
A way to let this program pay for itself, yes, of course.
Exactly.
Yes, we're in the process of researching it right now.
Barbara, do we have a count on how many Airbnbs there are in the city of Palm Coast?
There are approximately 275 that we are aware of. Just so you have an understanding, what we do is quarterly, we get with the county, and the county gives us a list of all of the short-term rentals. Then what we do is we go into our database, which is a rental registration. We check to see if they are registered. If they're not registered, then we go out with a letter. So right now, we do have the locations of where the ones that are registered with the county.
And that's just the city of Palm Coast?
City proper, yes, ma'am.
Yep, there's a lot more in Flagler Beach too, beachside. I was going to say, I would be curious to know what type of options we may have in the future if a short-term rental were to fall into a nuisance abatement type situation. I know that we're not going to be allowed to prohibit people from having short-term rentals, but I don't know if we have, like a bad actor type situation where if there's a person who obviously is not complying with our city standards, do they somehow lose the ability to operate a short-term rental in the city of Palm Coast?
I think that our city attorney is working on that now, and it's kind of maybe probably the same effect of our code board, 3 strikes and you're out.
3
type
strikes,
thing.
right to jail.
Well, not all of them, but
Oh, okay.
I know we are working on that.
Gotcha. Okay, I'd be curious in those avenues, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
I do have a question for our attorney on this. Presently with code enforcement, if you're in violation, you go to a code board hearing and you get fined, and that fine starts accumulating, eventually, we have folks in this city that owe more than their house is worth on some properties. Is that a tool we can use with these short-term rentals?
I would say yes, in the long run. If we can set up a program like we have for any code enforcement, and we bring them to the hearings, and, for example, if they don't respond, and we follow all the due process rights, then we can move forward and eventually move towards a foreclosure type of.
And they're not protected because they're not homesteaded. So
Correct.
it does have stronger teeth in that regard.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I would just remind the council, we are a little handcuffed that we are not allowed to prohibit short-term rentals. So anything that says that, hey, you no longer can do a short-term rental, we would not be able to do something like that.
But I assume if we have a bad actor comes to code enforcement, or whatever board we use for this, and they haven't complied, we can start putting those fines on them. And that's certainly going to affect them.
And a
And
lot
at a
of-
certain point, I would think, since they're not homesteaded, does this give us more
Foreclosure.
options on foreclosure?
Correct, but a lot of times you'll find that the property owner, once brought to their attention, and it happens once, it happens twice, they normally
Right.
will change their property management, may no longer let it be a short-term rental. Maybe the cost factor in there plays a part in it, yes.
Sure, and it's a business, it should
Sure.
play a part.
Correct.
So I just want to thank City Council for kind of embedding and making this a priority through the code folks who already have a head start. So it gives us a leap forward in being able to address this. And I know the attorney and Barbara are working together to come up with a plan. And that should be available for discussion at City Council within the next couple of meetings, or what are you thinking?
I believe we do have it on the last discussion, City Manager, if you can remind me when we were going to bring that up.
At your August
August?
workshop.
Okay, all right, very good. So we'll listen to complaints and residents between now and then and be well prepared for that discussion. Thank you, yeah.
Mayor, I have a couple other observations and comments on this issue. So when I was looking at the backup data for who is getting these fines, liens, assessments, a lot of these properties are owned by the same LLCs, and they are subsidiaries of some bigger builders in our city that make a lot of money, that do a lot of good business, and we appreciate them. But at the same time, this is taking a lot of staff resources every single year to send out these abatement notices, these lien or fine notices. I'm wondering if, because I know a lot of these are like very random lots, drop lots, is there some leverage that we as a city can use to maybe get some of this property at a lower cost, take away the kind of nuisance issue for the homeowner, and get us land for either stormwater, turn lanes, easements, anything that we may need in that regard, so that we're kind of doing business in a smart way? Because a lot of these properties are like very random properties that I think we could probably leverage with the property owner. Say, look, we fine you every single year on this property. We spend staff resources sending out these notices. We need this for a stormwater easement, and working with them in that regard. Is that something that
So
we're looking into?
You're talking about vacant property, Lynn?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
The theory is,
That could be a question for somebody else. I don't mean to put you on the spot in that regard, but I think that this is something that we can leverage, because, again, these aren't, a lot of these are not residents, right? I mean, they're little random lots.
Wildfire mitigation, hazardous trees, that type of thing.
Sure, yeah.
That are next door to a property, and then what they're doing is they're only clearing the 30 feet from structure into their property. So, I'm sure it would be a cost factor to see how that would weigh out on a vacant lot versus what their nuisance abatement was.
Yeah, I would just encourage staff to maybe look at some of these properties and see if there is anything that we can leverage, and then to the property owners, work with staff and see if there can be something worked out as far as kind of getting, and it's a tax break for the property owners as well, if they donate land to the city for our easements and things like that. So it's helping the city, it could be helping the homeowner, it could be, in the future, preventing them from continuing to get these fines and these liens, and can get them a tax break as well. So just something I think that we should look into that could benefit all parties.
And then one more quick question. The more detailed list, are these all the properties that owe in the city of Palm Coast?
The list that you have, yes, that's for this year.
For this
Now,
year? Are there any carryovers that do have,
Because they have a 3-year arrears, so they may not have paid it last year, so it could roll over. So when you get your tax deed, you're going to see 2023, 2024, it could say 22, 23, 24, and there may be abatements in there. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, Helena, I think, is she here? I don't know. Well, we normally get about 90-some% back, so it's paid in the tax roll normally.
Well, and just for a note, I think, so this list is complete, then the most somebody owes in the city of Palm Coast is around $2,000, $1,000, something like that, $1,500?
Correct. It's depending on the amounts of time that you have to do something. I mean, you could have a vacant lot that's being mowed every 3 weeks because they want it manicured like the next door neighbor who has a lawn service every week. So that's where it becomes redundant. But wildfire mitigation is normally once a year, maybe twice a year. Hazardous trees could be more.
Excellent. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anybody, no outstanding hundreds of thousands.
No, not on here. That would be on our regular, when we do our code enforcement process, when fine would continue to run and the lien would run for 20 years with the state of Florida.
And how many of those do we have that are in,
We do have quite a few. We probably average, if you figure, we average 30 to 50 cases a month to code board. But I would say that, 75, 80% of them come into compliance by the time they get to code board.
Okay, understood.
So it just has to be somebody that just doesn't care. And then, like I said, if it's not homesteaded, we can go into a foreclosure process. If it is homesteaded, then we just stay with a 20-year lien and wait till they go into a finance or to a selling of the property.
Understood. Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Barbara, thank you for the presentation. We've put a few not new things, but some more stuff your way. So are you comfortable with the direction that City Council?
Yes, I have your notes, yes.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, appreciate you. All right, with that, we'll move to presentation E4, which would be regarding elected officials and use of social media.
Okay, good luck.
Counselor, I guess you're going to do that? Drop something right to your right on the floor. There you go. Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good morning. It's still good morning. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, council members. Marcus Duffy, City Attorney. I am going to be going over a presentation today, hopefully I don't mess up my technology here, about a new Supreme Court decision that came out last March. So it was a Supreme Court decision in Link v. Freed, and it was a unanimous decision. The decision was written by Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And what it pretty much establishes, what I have there on the slide for you today, is that it establishes the test for when a government official are considered state actors. And when I say government officials, that's also considering government employees, elected government officials as well. So it's what pretty much is considered a state action dealing with First Amendment and in today's technology of social media posts. All right, so just some facts about this case. This case was brought because a city manager in a small town in Michigan used his Facebook page to post about things about what the city was doing, what he was doing as the city manager. And just some more important facts about this. He didn't designate that this was his personal page. It was just a regular page that had his name on it. It had his title that he was the city manager. He did not have it closed. He had it open to the public. So pretty much anyone had access to it. I believe that one time when he did start this Facebook page, he did have it blocked to only friends, but then he opened it to everyone in the public. So residents would interact with him on this Facebook page. He would give updates about the city, like I said, what they were doing. But residents could also comment, hey, can the city do this? We need some improvements in this, and he would provide feedback. There would be comments on certain posts that he would have, but it came to a time and a point where I think he probably just got sick and tired of constructive or not so good feedback, and he deleted comments that he thought, as I put here, as derogatory or stupid. So during COVID, more interaction with social media, more people are probably inside, so more people are online. He was giving updates with COVID regarding what the city was doing, their action plans, any hiring freezes. One resident by the name of Linked decided to comment on his posts and said pretty much, hey, as they say here, the city deserves better. You guys aren't doing a good job. So Mr. Freed decided to delete that resident's comments and blocked him from Facebook. So once blocked, Link could still see the posts that he commented on, but he couldn't do anything about it. So what he did, what we can do in this country, he decided to sue Freed, pretty much saying that he violated his First Amendment right, freedom of speech. He sued him under the 42 U.S.C. 1983, alleging that he had violated his First Amendment rights. So first, let's talk about the law and talk about how this case was brought. In order to sue the government, there has to be some type of state action. You can't sue someone for their private action. It has to be something regarding to a state actor. So you're doing something that is behalf of the government. That could be a local city government, a county, state, or federal government. So In order to bring this, you have to have some type of connection. So, through the 14th Amendment, which obligates states to honor constitutional rights that are protected under 1983 statute. And the statute says here on your slide, you see in that first prong, every person who under any color of statute, ordinance, regulation, custom, or usage of any state deprives someone of a federal constitution or statutory right. So here we connected what is a federal constitutional right that we have in this country is freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of press, certain those things. So what Link alleged here is that by the city manager using his social media page, he used it as a state actor. He used it for the government to pretty much provide resources that the government were having. And that by him blocking Link, he therefore is violating his First Amendment right of freedom of speech, freedom to give an opinion about the government. So the court came up with a decision here. Their main decision here is that when someone runs in our local governments, our state governments, federal governments, they don't give up what is called their private rights. Just because Mr. Freed became a city manager, he didn't give up his First Amendment right. So the First Amendment protects a public employee's right in certain circumstances. So I will highlight that. Each thing that I say here, it's going to be a fact-specific inquiry, is what the court said. You know, they do develop a test here, but first thing that you have to realize, everything's going to be fact-specific. So the test here is that a government official's social media posts are only attributed to the state only if the official, two prongs. One, possess actual authority to speak on the state's behalf, and two, purports to exercise that authority when he or she spoke on social media. So let's break that down a little bit more. The test, the first prong. So possess actual authority. Very important word here is actual. Has to have the actual authority in the job description. You can't assume. An example that Justice Barrett wrote, one great thing about her opinion is that she gave a lot of examples in this for the public to use going forward. So she gave the example as if the city manager posted a list of local restaurants with health code violations and deleted snarky comments made by other users, and if the public health code or that type of thing is not in that city manager's job description or in their purview, then they're not acting as a state actor. It can't be assumed or anything like that. So the first prong of the test, it has to be within their authorization to talk about it. So it can't just be some random stuff that the city is doing. It actually have the authorization to talk about it to be considered a state action. The second thing is, it has to be in furtherance of that authorization. So meaning that they have to be using that job that they're authorized to do, but they're also furthering that job and that authorization through some type of social media platform. So they're speaking in that platform to further their job responsibilities. What I'll show here on the slides is that if they're just repeating other information that's already been brought out there, then they're not acting as a state actor. So example here is that a school board president announced at a school board meeting that the board had lifted pandemic area restrictions for public schools. So school board president is in their official capacity. They're at their agenda, so that meets that first prong. Second prong is that they're doing it in their authority. So during it, where they would announce it, that is furtherance of their authority. Okay, so that meets the first two prongs, the two prongs altogether. Now the next example she gives is that if that same school board president decides to announce with his buddies at a backyard barbecue, hey, we're restricting the mask where we don't have to do that anymore. The schools are going to open everything up now. That doesn't meet him as a state actor. That just says that he does have the authority to make that announcement, but he's making that announcement in his private capacity because he's not furthering his authority. He's usually just telling people. And there's also other avenues and venues that he announced it. So it's not the sole source of how the announcement was. So a couple other things that Justice Barrett wanted to point out to the public is that, well, a lot of with social media today, we say, hey, this is my personal Facebook page, or this is the posts on this Facebook page are for my personal view and my personal view only. Those are some good things to have in our social media pages to have. However, she says that those things are not irrebuttable. If you have on your social media page or any social media website, you post something and it says, these are the personal opinions of myself, but they still meet the first two prongs, that you have the authorization to speak on it and you're furthering that authorization, you could still be liable as acting as a state actor. All right, and then another example she wanted to give as a fact-specific inquiry. In this example, she shows that the mayor posts on his specific Facebook page, and the mayor says in this Facebook page that exclusively on this Facebook page only makes this announcement. So it doesn't make the announcement anywhere else. That pursuant to this ordinance, I am temporarily suspending enforcement of alternate side parking rules. So in this specific example, this is where it shows that it meets both tests. That A, the mayor has authorization because it's citing that pursuant to that municipal ordinance, he or she does. But it also is showing that nowhere else is he making this announcement. So by doing that, he's giving the authorization, and he's also furthering his authorization by no other means announcing anywhere else. If, in this example, the mayor decided to announce this on his Facebook page, but say somewhere else in the city, they had other announcements going out, other advertisements, other publications, then he's just literally just repeating other information that's already available and would not meet the definition of a state actor according to this case law.
You understand that, David?
Yep, I absolutely do. That's why I don't do the Facebook thing.
Yeah, that's why all the city press releases go through my Facebook.
I've done myself because of this.
So in a nutshell, this is a new case that came out that kind of gave, I would say, a little more power to local government, protects local government with election season coming up, and I just wanted to give this education to you all. The one thing that I would say is that coming from this, my view is that I advise my clients on this, is that if you're going to engage in Facebook and you're going to put stuff out there, I would say be open to the feedback you're going to get. Justice Barrett did say that if there is some type of political, we'll say, comments that are on a Facebook page and you decide to block someone, you are setting yourself up for liability for the city. So it hasn't been tested yet, but that was a concern that the Supreme Court wanted to release. Any questions on this?
So, good. It's complicated, so questions. Yeah, please.
I hate Facebook.
Okay.
But I have had one issue occasionally on my personal Facebook page, all right, where I'm not violating any of this. I'm not stating something, as a state actor. I've had a couple people come on and just drop lots of F-bombs, and I have blocked them. And I've had one person in particular complain about it, and my reaction has been, sue me. Because I don't know who's looking at my Facebook page. I don't know if children are looking at it, families, and I'm not going to tolerate that type of behavior. So knock yourself out and take me to court, which they, of course, haven't done. So I assume I'm in good standing there.
So in fact specific, I would also tell you, so hate speech is not a First Amendment protected speech. So in your specific example, you talked about people cussing and stuff like that. That is not a protective speech at all, and that would not be freedom of speech under the law.
Great, thank you.
Councilwoman?
To me, the biggest example or the biggest issue that we could run into is if we say how we're going to vote on our page on an upcoming issue. So the example that was given where the mayor said, I'm lifting whatever ordinance.
Yeah, the school board.
Whatever it was. He's announcing for the first time that he is going to lift this ordinance. If one of us were to say on our Facebook page, we have XYZ issue coming up, this is how I'm going to vote, whether it's to be transparent or to kind of, rally the troops, whatever the reason is that now us acting in our official capacity on our personal page? In your opinion, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, and if you need to get back to me on that, that's fine too.
No. I love the dialogue and the discussion. So in Councilmember Pontieri, in your fact specific, you're saying this is their private page or their page that they're running for office in?
I would say either one.
Okay. So I would say in your fact specific question, if the person that is running is, we'll start with this, their personal page, this is my personal opinions and these are my blah, 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 and saying I'm going to vote a certain way. If they're just stating that by itself, I think they're fine. If someone comments on stuff like that, and how they disagree with their, what they're going to vote on, and then they delete and block them, then I think they would be setting themselves up for some type of litigation of violating that person's First Amendment speech.
So that gets to the heart of it, because from my understanding of this case and from what you've just gone through, basically, we all have our personal pages, but the moment we take official action or state something in that regard, we've now almost transformed it into a more official type page. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would agree. It's like the court says, it's going to be fact specific. I would say that I don't think the court dealt with that specific fact inquiry, but I do think it could go down that road. And I do think in that specific thing, you would be setting the city up for some type of litigation because, the court didn't decide that specific one. So that could be an interpretation that could go through the courts. And I would just say, why leave something up for chance?
Sure.
If you could safeguard it and protect the city, then yeah, we wouldn't want to go down that road.
Now, on the flip side of that, if I were to say, if someone asked, so what are the hours of the splash pad? And I simply said, the hours of the splash pad are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., which I don't know if those are the hours, just as a caveat.
They are now.
Yeah. Because it's already public information, it's already on our website, et cetera, that would not be something that would transform my
Correct. Because
personal-
it's not in your authorization as a council member.
It's
but-
already in the public, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, it's got to be, it's like you're doing it, it's your job, this is within your resume, and it's also it's in furtherance of your job responsibilities.
Got it, okay.
So just to clarify something, though, I don't think any of us here have official government Facebook pages through the city. I mean, I don't.
It doesn't have to be official,
Okay,
yeah.
so on our personal Facebook pages, okay, where we say personal Facebook pages, we have freedom of speech, we have freedom of political speech, whether it's our campaign page or our personal page. So if we had something coming before city council, suppose it was to give our city attorney a 100% pay increase, and I posted on my personal Facebook page, and I said, I am absolutely opposed to giving our city attorney a 100% pay increase. I don't think I'm violating anything there, am I?
I think you could be, there is an argument that you could be, I wouldn't say violating is the right word. You're allowed to say that. That's perfectly fine. But what I would say is that, what if in an example, someone commented on your post?
So you comment on my posts anonymously that you want 100%.
Yeah, but like, let's say
and that's fine. So that's fine. I leave your comment there.
Yeah, I wouldn't delete it. I wouldn't block them. That's what I'm recommending.
So the key is this deleting and blocking piece, I think.
So think of social media like what we're doing right here. You and I are having a conversation. So if you block them, you're not letting that person have their First Amendment right to give an opinion on a local government matter.
Right. But if they drop a lot of F-bombs, that's a different story, right?
In that fact-specific inquiry, yes. That could be a different story. That could be a different story.
Marcus, maybe could you clarify quasi-judicial items and posting on Facebook?
Quasi-judicial items would consider as well on Facebook. So if you're posting something that is considered a quasi-judicial item that you're going to vote on, that would be considered a state actor. And if someone comments on that, and if you delete that comment, that would also be considered state action.
And if someone does comment on it, and so when we're asked if we've been in contact with anyone concerning this, Facebook's the same thing as an email or a phone call, correct?
Yeah, you'd have to disclose that.
You disclose that.
Yeah,
Yes, I've
I
received
just never thought
public
about it that
comments.
way, but yeah. But I would also say, like, okay, I don't know how much you monitor your Facebook. I don't monitor my Facebook that much. So I would think if you didn't notice someone comment on that, you would probably be given an okay. But yeah, you would want to do your best to make sure, if you're posting comments on your social media that's regarding to the city, I would say you want to monitor it. And so if something does come up as a quasi-judicial, monitor it to make sure that there's no interactions.
So I just, Marcus, thank you. I would ask each city council member if you need to go a little bit deeper or share your own Facebook experience with Marcus, just to make sure you're
One more
I
question.
mean, it's pretty clear, but I would recommend that you speak directly to him. Yes, Nick?
My question would be, basically, what you're saying, are these at the individual post level or the macro profile level? So if there were posts that have nothing to do with government, just say I'm posting me in a picture Lego set that I put together, has nothing to do with government, am I allowed to not have that as public? And the only things that I'm required to have as public are things that do fall into the categories like we talked earlier?
So so it would have to be something related, so just a picture of yourself, that's private.
So I'm allowed to have, they're allowed to commingle, I should say, but the ones that deal with a city capacity or as a state actor, those are the ones that need to be available and made public and have to pay attention to all of the subtleties that go into reviewing and moderating comments? Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, yes, in general, they could just be easier if you're gonna have a social media page, have one that's a public one and one that's a private one. Because then if it's private, you can allow people access who you don't, because if you just want to have friends and family, if you're going to have a public one as a city official, that's where, it's just a general have everything.
Cool, thank you.
Everyone comfortable? No questions. No questions, okay. So like I said, we rely on Marcus if you have a question about your specific action on Facebook. I think that would be appropriate. Lauren, did you have any other comment? You're good?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to item number 5, which is a presentation of the comprehensive plan. This is our workshop number 2, and we're going to be talking about housing, parks, conservation, and infrastructure. So the question comes up now. We're going to take a break at some point. Did you want to do an intro because of the time? Did you want a break?
So lunch will be here at 11:30. It's to council's pleasure about when you would like to take your break. Staff is prepared to keep moving until lunch is here.
So is there an intro piece that they'd like to get through?
I would
That
leave
makes sense in the next 20 minutes or so?
I would leave that to Ray if he'd like to kick off an introduction.
You want to get that part out of the way, and then when we come back, we'll be able to be right into it. So just please go ahead and proceed.
All right, thank you, everybody. Ray Tyner, Deputy Chief Development Officer. This is our second workshop with our elements. Today, we will be covering, we'll do an overview, and then what we plan on doing is also updating from our previous meetings that we had on our last workshop. We had several comments and suggestions from City Council. So we have some slides, and we can probably cover that before the break on some of the edits that we made based on your suggestions. Then we have 3 elements today. We have the public and recreations and open space. We have the conservation and coastal management, and we have the infrastructure. Sorry, 4 elements, big day today. And we also we'll finish up with the housing elements, and then we'll talk about next steps. So just a quick reminder, as you recall, we all had a good consensus on the guiding principles that are guiding this plan. This was based on our community input, our significant community input that we had with the community. And then you can see in our draft GOPS, goals, objectives, and policies, that we actually use these icons to illustrate that connection with our community. So just following up from our previous workshop, we had some comments, suggestions on Chapter 7. As you recall, that was our intergovernmental coordination element. There was a typo that was corrected on Policy 7111. Also in the intergovernmental coordination elements, we added some language. Collaborate with Flagler County and other municipalities in Flagler County was a suggestion to add that. That's in red, our changes. And then another in our Chapter 7, this was a suggestion from City Council to update and to add some additional language, not to a policy itself, but for the summary of that policy that we had added, some data. And another, Chapter 7, another
recommendation from City Council was we had our policy 7132. There was number 9 and 10 that seemed to be kind of cut off, and we were asked to elaborate on those. And you can see in the red, those were our changes that we made for that policy. And then another one for intergovernmental coordination, another change, add language to include all modes of transportation, including rail, so we did add that. Intergovernmental coordination element, another one, needed to include the state in the policy, so we added the state, of Florida. These were just no changes in the policy, that's just some commentary that was had. And then in Chapter 10, our property rights, this was one that we had a suggestion to make sure we took out the word development because we wanted to make it really clear that the property rights element is for all property owners, not just for developers. These are for private citizens. The property rights element are for anybody who owns property within the city boundary. So Mayor, I can take some feedback or some comments on those changes if you desire.
Thank you for doing it this way. It's really easy to track. I appreciate you guys taking that step. And I think we can have this conversation separately. I still have an issue with regards to the language for the schools. And I know that we spent a lot of time on that last time. We had a representative from administration here, and I welcome him back, or maybe, I don't know if we need to meet with the school board while meeting with PLDRB. I have a concern with regards to the level of service or the facilities that we're planning for or not planning for our schools, particularly as we move west. And I'm just not comfortable with the language. I understand, it's standard, it's standard. Well, if we want to get back to grade A schools, then we need to exceed what is standard, because it's not standard to be a grade A school system. So if we're looking at exceeding that, then we need to look at exceeding those minimum requirements as well, and those minimum standards. So I think it's a larger conversation that needs to be had, certainly not today because we've got so much to get through. But I would ask that maybe staff look to coordinating, because I think we have another meeting with PLDRB, right? Don't we coming up here?
A joint meeting with PLDRB?
No joint meetings.
We don't?
No.
Okay. I don't know how to address this, and I'm open to suggestion from my colleagues.
Help me with give me an example or specific on the school piece, just so I understand it, because I hear you. I just need kind of an example. Give me a bearing here.
So it's with regards to the capacity.
Right.
And here's my issue, okay? I know for a fact that we have students in some of our schools that do not have workstations. They don't have workstations. That is a fact. I have spoken to teachers. I've spoken to other people who are in our schools. And so, as I understand it, there's some schools, high school doesn't have the same issue as middle and elementary schools, right? And I think that's why we changed the grade levels to combine, I think, 5th or 6th grade with one or the other. I don't know that specific. But when I'm looking at, we have to be at 100% capacity before we look to building another school. And then I think we allowed for over 120% capacity before we're kind of at like DEFCON 4, right? I understand the consultant last time said, well, that's standard. I don't know that that's enough for our students. And I don't know that we should have the same standard across the board. If we see that there's a larger need in elementary or middle, should we change that and be more malleable, even if the capacity needs are not there for the high school age students yet? And again, this isn't my world. I'm not on school board, so I don't deal with this every single day. But when I hear people come to me and say, hey, I heard you during the comp plan discussion talking about capacity, I know for a fact we have students that don't have workstations. That hurts me. I don't like to hear that. And it's not anecdotal, it's a fact. So I don't know how we address that, and I'm just concerned because it is in here on page 117, and to hear, well, that's standard. That's not a sufficient response.
So I guess the first question would be, now, some of this is mandated or legislated by the state. So I just want to, with regard to those capacity numbers, it's my understanding that those are provided by the state. Is that correct?
Yeah, the state provides the capacity numbers, but I think, you know, and our consultant, I think, had sent out everybody the analysis throughout the state of Florida. You know, you're looking at 100%, it's 110% of capacity. And the way it reads, and I hear your concern about, hey, are you just going to, once you hit 100, are you now going to start looking for a school, and then years, you know, we're not going to have student stations. So if I think what we can do, there's things that we do and there's things that Flagler School Board does, right, the responsibility. So I really think that addressing this, and I haven't forgot about you, because we need to talk to Flagler Schools, and maybe we can work with them on like an intergovernmental coordination policy or some sort of policy that illustrates that, hey, prior to reaching that 100% efficient capacity, we're hand in hand working together, identifying solutions, identifying new school sites, identifying ways of having capacity. And I think that may help. I mean, is that kind of what you're looking for, maybe as a...
Absolutely. Even if it's something in the policy that says that every 3 years, the school board is going to come to city council, I think I mentioned this last time we had this discussion, and give us an update. Where are the schools? Where's capacity specifically for each elementary, each middle school, and each high school? Because we can't throw them all in the same bucket. We know we have growth in certain areas over others, and that's going to continue. Growth isn't concentrated or isn't spread all around the city, right? So just because we're seeing growth and capacity changes in one school doesn't mean it's happening across the board. But we don't know, because we don't do that every day. The school board does that. So I think it absolutely is an intergovernmental piece. So maybe even a policy that says every 3 years or every other year, whatever it is, the school board will come with a presentation, or we will, schedule something with them. Maybe we go to them. I don't know, but something.
What I could add is that, so we currently have in place an intergovernmental committee, which is called the Interlocal Agreement Committee, which is specifically between the municipalities and the school district. And that meets at least on an annual basis. We may not have to wait for 3 years. And that is a place where these reports are presented by the school district. So maybe we could add language and bring that committee forward to city council.
That's what I'm looking for, is the communication. It's a communication piece, because to say, oh, we have an ILA, we have a ton of ILAs. It doesn't mean that all the information is being communicated out, especially in the sunshine, right?
So if we state in your language that the report from that committee, and I think it's an annual, would be brought forward to city council. I think that gets you the information.
Be helpful.
And I would also suggest, rather than saying they come to us, and I heard you also say, or we go to them, we set up a joint sort of...
Whatever it is.
Whatever works, because they don't work for us.
Right.
And I don't want to put them in a position where they think they have to answer to us. They have their own responsibilities. But I think the communications, and I think setting up a meeting, whether it's every year or every 2 years, 3 years, I'm open on this, but something along that line, so we can be informed as to what they're doing.
Good.
Because the capacity thing, like you said, some of it's stated by, dictated by state law. Also, but I'm curious what kind of plan they have. If they have one school that's exceeding capacity, I assume they have some kind of plan for temporary structures or something until they reach the point where they have to make that decision.
Modulars.
And it's not a decision like, oh my God, one person doesn't have a workstation, let's build a school. They have to have some sort of transition, I would think. And I'd like to know what that plan is.
This might be helpful, and City Manager, if you would, there's a description of the ILA committee in terms of its purpose and its function. If you could get that to each city council member, and that might be an easy starting point from which city council could be made aware of the forecasting and the plans for the school district going forward. I think that's a good place for that.
Yeah,
Because you've got all the players in one group there.
To your point, Vice Mayor, I don't put this forward because I think that the school board works for us. Rather, we are making decisions, approving residential units, approving development that directly affects them.
Oh, yeah, no,
So,
I didn't mean to
Yeah,
imply
no, I
that.
just want to
wanna-
make sure for
Yeah,
the,
no,
for
I didn't
for
mean
the
to
public.
imply that. That's why
yeah.
I sort of brought that forward to say, hey, you don't work for us.
Yeah.
And you didn't mean to put it
No,
in
no,
that
no,
terms.
no.
Oh,
I mean,
no, I get it.
Our
I get it.
decisions are directly affecting, the difficulty of their job sometimes. So I think that we should just be more collaborative in that way.
100% agree.
And so just for clarification, I know the mayor and I, we serve on that ILA board, and it's, and also the working group. Thank you guys for all the hard work working with our school board, and when developers come to the school board to try to have concurrency to make sure that there are allocations for seats and things like this, there may be a duality in communications too, because I would think that the conversation of, when I hear they don't have workstations, does that mean standing room only? Like, does that mean like they don't have a place to sit down and do their work?
From what I understand, there's like rotations for certain activities. So they're rotating students for certain activities and things like that, because if they were all to be in the same place at the same time, there wouldn't be capacity for them.
Okay.
That's the way that I understand it. And again, this is where the communication, where I would like to hear from the school board or teachers, whomever, an advocate, to explain these types of things more.
Yep, totally understood. And that's the type of modularity that they kind of do discuss, and trying to bring in those portables to, hit the 100% capacity. And the discussion that we've had, and myself amongst other school board members, is, 105% capacity doesn't deem the need for a full new school, because the worst thing you can ever do is shut down a school after you build it, and the costs of equipping both with all of the necessary resources. But just also FYI, the student count is still slightly above where it was pre-COVID. So even though we've had all of this growth, the total student number is still on par with where it was a few years before COVID. So,
But we're about to vastly change the landscaping of Palm Coast.
sure, and
that's my bigger
Bunnell as well,
concern.
and Bunnell as well, with all the
Yes,
housing
yes,
that goes
correct.
on, and Hunter's Ridge and all these things. But that's the type of discussion we have at ILA, so that we can have those type of things on the forefront, so they can start to behind the scenes maneuver themselves to be able to say, hey, we're going to need to have additional capacity, so let's start to look at locations for schools and things like this. But I think a higher level and clearer channels of communication, I think, would help solve all of this.
Yeah, thanks for your feedback. We will work with them and bring back a policy.
Okay. And you'll get that ILA out to everybody so they understand what the purpose of that meeting and that group and who the attendees are would be helpful to everybody on the council.
Yes, Mayor, I made that note. And just for City Council's understanding, the school district and city staff, we work very well together in coordination. And another great example of that is we have the principals breakfast next week, where we've invited you as well as the school board, and, talk about these issues, round table, but also a meet and greet, and understand what their program needs are, and then how we can work together. So that's another great example of that coordination and collaboration.
So was lunch at
So is this a break point now in your
I
presentation?
think it would be good, because the next thing we're going to cover was Parks and Recreation chapter, so this is probably a good time to
So
break.
do you want to reconvene at noon-ish? What do you feel?
Seems good.
12:15, 12? Help me here, 12:15.
It's fine.
Everybody good?
Okay.
Eastern Standard.
So we're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting to reconvene at 12:15. Everybody, thank you.
Yep.